All right, Gabe, we are back a week later with a new conversation. I'm actually interested to hear, because last week I wasn't. No, I'm super interested to hear a little bit of what you're seeing out in the market. As we spoke, kind of preparing for this conversation, one of the interesting things I heard from you is you are out talking to dozens and dozens of companies, and you're seeing people all across the spectrum in terms of where they're at in their AI adoption, or and you've talked about this AI maturity curve, and what you shared with me, and I think it would be interesting to talk about with everybody right now, is what are the trends you're seeing and where is it going? So first, give us a recap. What's up?
Yeah. Look, I mean, if you haven't seen me on LinkedIn, I'm ranting every day, Dave. I mean, this is like the funnest thing I've ever done. But
we all know. Well, we all know. Yeah, it's out there.
With that said, I think some people are buying into it a little bit because I have now done probably a half dozen, and I have a half dozen planned, of talking to companies about how to move from what I'm kind of saying skeptics or observers into architects, or I've been kind of using this word that's maybe a little bit different from how do you get from into an orchestration idea and really build this idea of an autonomous enterprise. And when you and I were batting back and forth, we thought maybe I should share more broadly some of the things that I've been telling these other people.
Yeah. And so tell us a little bit more, kind of the framework. So a little bit about the definition of an autonomous enterprise,
yes,
and really how this became a topic, like the article that Microsoft published a couple of weeks ago, and then how you see the evolution, or how we are seeing the evolution of AI within the organizations.
Yeah, look, I think Dave's kind of referencing this article that came across, and what is it, Dave? It's we should probably link it so that everyone can see it. But they really talk, and maybe they really talked about their own kind of experimentation, what they're seeing as far as companies moving up, really this maturity curve in the world. And there's some pretty interesting stuff. Oh, I've got it right here. It's called The Year of the Frontier Firm is Born. And they kind of talk about just the maturity of how companies are kind of moving from, more of a human-driven organization to this idea of really more of a human-led and cloud employee-operated organization. And as you and I were kind of batting this idea around, it's kind of this autonomous organization or enterprise that they talk about. It isn't just about using AI, it's really about running on it. And this shift from execution to orchestration means building systems where work is done by cloud employees who are managed by other humans. And again, article's fascinating, but at a high level, that's kind of the vision that we're working towards, Dave.
Right? So there's a thing that's interesting in the venture community, that we're constantly evaluating the efficiency of a company. And there's a couple of them. One is, and the main one I want to highlight, is this concept of revenue per employee. So you've seen, companies as they're scaling, it's how much revenue does a company have per employee? And if a company is, down, let's call it $100,000 or, $120,000, that's not super efficient. And I've seen companies that are even in, below 100K. I think as a rule of thumb, you want to be in the high, $180,000 as a tech company. But I think there's a new metric that I think we mentioned it last week, that's coming out, and we're calling it the CEC ratio. The ECE ratio,
That's right.
The employee to cloud employee ratio. Explain what that is.
Yeah, look, and the interesting thing, Dave, and I want to see if I can kind of highlight where some of these ideas are coming in this different maturity curve, because I think that'll help people navigate as they kind of move from kind of 0 to gear 5, if you will, on their AI journey. But that ECE ratio is kind of this employee to cloud employee concept, where line managers, lead agents, like team members, AI architects kind of step back to manage the system, not the agents. And you get this new org structure that happens where for every human you have, you'll have at least one cloud employee. So like a 1-to-1 ratio. And I think as companies continue on this journey, what you're going to see is a real flip. Right now, most companies, probably 200 employees, 500 employees to 1 or 0 or something like that.
Right.
As they move towards that 1-to-1 and eventually probably even that, 1 employee to, I don't know, 6, maybe 10 cloud employees. That's the paradigm shift that you're seeing happening at the end of that maturity curve.
And I want to highlight, we just dropped off a call before this where we were talking to a woman who runs a super hot e-com company. They're scaling like crazy from a revenue standpoint and a product demand standpoint. One of the hottest healthcare brands out in the world right now. Share what her board and her CEO said to her. Like, this is, and I think we're going to see this all over the place.
Yeah, look, Dave, you and I have chatted about this before. I've had the same problem. I think many of us are having it in boardrooms. She basically said she can't hire. She's got to do more with less.
That's it, right?
And the key is she does have to do more. It's not do the same. It's do more, but she can't hire. And so the question was, how do I do this? And her answer was cloud employees. I've been asked, Dave, I think I joked with you. I was sitting in a board. What's your AI strategy, Gabe? Not if, just when. What is it? A lot of people are getting asked that question. And the truth is, AI isn't the strategy, as you and I said. It's the response. The strategy is about building a leaner, smarter, and a new kind of company.
So that's an interesting problem. So look, I think every CEO, every executive is being challenged. Okay, you can't add more people. And if you do, it's very few. You have to figure out how to scale and grow your business with way fewer people. And it's not like remove people like that. I know there's a lot of fear in the market. We're not hearing that where you're like, oh, you just got to get rid of people. They're saying, look, you've got the team you've got, but now you got to grow more. You have to grow more efficiently. And I think AI is an approach. It is not an answer. It's an approach. So walk us through this AI maturity curve, because I think everybody is sitting at some different place in their evolution. So look, what's real, what's not real, where are people at?
Yeah, this is interesting because you and I introduced this, maybe a couple months ago, but the amount that we've learned, and the thing I want to dive into today is how some of the things people are doing in each of these levels. But at a high level, we basically got these kind of 5 things that have popped out. So at the bottom, you have skeptics still stuck on debating, probably hallucinations. Then you have observers watching, but doing nothing. Explorers are kind of playing with prompts. Operators plug agents.
A lot of GPT, like in that middle category. This is where people are like power GPT users, right?
That's correct. So, and it'd be interesting to kind of dive into that a little bit. So you've got the explorers. This is where it starts to get a little confusing to people, and then it's very new. But operators start to plug agents into workflows, and then architects, they're really hiring cloud employees to do their actual job. And so you'll see this on the screen here, but it's kind of a maturity where you go human only, human led, agent ignored, human with assistant, human agent teams, and then last but not least is this human led cloud employee operated. And what we're seeing, Dave, is most companies overestimate where they are. That's first and foremost. But we're seeing about 8% in skeptics, 24% in observers, 44% in explorers, 23% in operators, and 10% in architects. As I said, those numbers in some cases might be a little generous, but that is kind of what we're seeing currently in the market.
So let's talk about some of these different categories.
Yes.
And why are people in the spot? Again, let's assume everyone's a little bit generous in their self definitions, because this was a survey, right?
Yes.
This isn't a study. This is self promoted information. But what are the behaviors that are in each of these categories, and why are we kind of stuck in some of these buckets?
Yes. So I am going to skip the first 2, skeptic and observer. Again, the observers are kind of the LinkedIn. I call them the LinkedIn lurkers, reading a lot, maybe liking a lot, but not really doing much. So I'm going to jump into that explorer phase because I think it's interesting. And what we're seeing there is companies starting fairly small. That is typically giving the tool like ChatGPT. We just mentioned it. But what they're doing to see if they can expand in that phase is they're sharing prompt frameworks. There is a proper way to use ChatGPT. It isn't just Google. Don't just ask it a question and then say, how many times can you say, do that better, make that better, right? So you're trying to get some small wins here. You're moving from curiosity to capability. that structure becomes important. The framework you use, there are some great prompt libraries out there. We're going to link one. Brandon Redlinger gave one from marketing. A lot of proven prompts that you can use as a marketer to kind of up your game in ChatGPT.
Is it just content? Like, are people using kind of in this stage, this explore stage? Is it mostly content that they're using AI for, or is it beyond that?
Look, I think at the moment it's this personal assistant. That's why I like the word AI assistant, and it is everything from content, certainly, emails or copy or landing pages in marketing, but to financial analysis. A lot of people are putting in Google Sheets and saying, can you kind of review this, build me a report, help me define a strategy. And so deep research, I've talked to a bunch of BDRs who love the deep research functionality, where you kind of get in a little bit deeper to understand your prospects. I just talked to somebody who built a custom GPT, and there's some of those advantages. Custom GPTs, folders where you can actually train and give some of these pieces a little more of a personality. But I love this custom GPT they were passing around. It was basically, they took all their third-party win-loss interviews, dumped it into custom GPT, passed it around to their sales team, and before calls, people were kind of talking about, how do I approach competitors or what messaging I should use? And so very content-driven, but fairly effective when it comes to how can I find an assistant? The thing I think people are now trying to do a little more is obviously expand beyond just the regular thread into folders and custom GPTs, track who's using it, because that's something that then organizations on those upper level licenses can say, hey, does everybody in the company at least have an assistant? Because if you do, there is gains there, Dave.
So,
there is.
The thing I want to hit, though, is it's an assistant. And I think there's a perception that, GPT is just, ask questions. What you're describing goes beyond just asking questions, right? You're generating meaningful content. You're preparing for presentations. You're preparing for conversations. It's research, and it's collaborated. It's well thought out. I mean, like you said, people are creating custom folders where they're pre-training it so that they come highly educated. Like, these are things where it's like, oh, here's all of the context of our company. Here's the context of this meeting. Now give me, 5 key bullet points that I can use and build a presentation around. It's pretty sophisticated stuff, actually.
And look, it's helping a lot of companies. I don't want to knock it. I think people are seeing a lot of gains. There's a lot of efficiency. The challenge we're starting to see, and I think it's the right question, is what's next? I've got GPT.
Before you move on, though, I think a lot of people who are probably listening to this are in this place where they're saying, okay, I know I need to go here. Maybe I have a premium license of OpenAI's GPT, or maybe I don't. What are the next things? And I think you're giving a roadmap here, saying, look, the first thing you should do is go beyond just asking questions and saying, now do it better. Now do it better. What we need to be doing, this next phase for people who aren't here yet, are creating things like custom folders, doing more sophisticated prompting, looking for prompt frameworks like the one you've shared here. Is that right?
And then again, start to track some of that usage so that you can actually, what's measured gets managed. And so I think those are 3 things to kind of just slowly up your game.
So now bring us to this next level then. What is it, and what are people doing in this bucket?
Yeah. So the interesting thing is, we did ask one of the things that's holding companies back from moving forward. And I just wanted to highlight that because as you move from kind of explorer to operator, a lot of people are thinking, and we put it out there. We said, is it more like bad data? Is it, processes? But truthfully, what we found is the thing probably holding the highest number of companies back is executive paralysis. It's the strategy docs, committee reviews, people saying, let's circle back to that next quarter. So there is a lot of analysis paralysis as people try to kind of move from explorer to operator.
And as we've spoken to people, I want to hit something interesting here. As we've spoken to people, the thing that seems to be causing a lot of this is still fear. If you remember in the study, there is, especially, it is crazy, especially in the executive space, there is this general fear, and it's not necessarily fear of losing a job. It feels like it's more like fear of losing control, or there's this underlying fear that is kind of preventing people from moving forward. So how do they move forward? What are the things they need to do?
Well, I think a lot of the fear is a misunderstanding of what's happening in the operator phase. And Dave, this is like hot off the press. I mean, these are just companies I'm talking to now on a daily. But there's 3. Yeah,
Conversation.
there's three things that are, I think, really starting to highlight what the operator phase looks like. And I want to just click through these each really quick. So the first thing is people are kind of throwing out their org chart. And let me double click on that. What I mean by that is they're building a work chart. They're mapping tasks, not titles. And you start to ask things like, what could agents or eventually cloud employees do? Okay. That's a really big one. The second is there is, and it's been a little bit of a joke on LinkedIn, but there is some truth to it. There is a little bit of a role forming here, often referred to as an AI architect. And they are there to make the system run. It's not about prompts so much anymore. It's about orchestration. And what they're doing is actually introducing this concept of AI flows. Now, a lot of people have said to me, Gabe, is everybody going to be an architect? And at the moment, Dave, the short answer is in the operator phase, no. It's not necessarily RevOps. It could be. Companies are training these. They're hiring these kind of individuals. But again, it is more of an engineering type mindset than it is. I actually talked to a RevOps leader yesterday, Dave, who said, I know what you're talking about, Gabe. I have no interest in going towards that because it is more of like an engineering mindset. And that is not what RevOps has been in the past.
Okay, I got it. Okay, then what's that third one?
And then that last one is that concept of an AI flow. It's again, this prompt is different than accomplishing tasks. So you have these flows that organizations are starting to build that do kind of look at certain things like I'm going to have an agent scrape these websites. I'm going to have an agent send 5 emails. I'm going to have an agent research something, and it's more task oriented than just feedback oriented as we were kind of in that prompt structure where I was purely just getting an assistant to say this document is good or bad.
And there's lots of tools emerging out there like make.com or N8N or Zapier that are out there that people are using to kind of build these flows in. And like you said, it's useful but it's complex. Like this is not something that, a VP of marketing is going to dig in and do, right?
That's right. And again, I talked to many leaders, Dave, who said, I wanted my VP of marketing to do this, but because it has the make.com type concept, they are now again emerging with these roles. But like I said, it's not just RevOps. You can transfer it over, but I'm seeing a lot of these people actually go outside or try to train their own people to be these AI architects to build these AI flows.
Okay. So then what's this last phase of the maturity curve?
Yeah. So this is obviously where it gets super, super fun, right? So this is the architect phase. Really look, this is the autonomous organization or autonomous enterprise, I think, in its definition. Couple things we're seeing emerge here that I think are pretty freaking cutting edge. Yeah. The model flips here. Okay. So you're not deploying agents to assist. You're hiring cloud employees to own jobs. AI doesn't just, for example, qualify leads, for example. It runs the whole inbound funnel. It doesn't just answer, or run this part of a support ticket. It owns tier 1 support. Okay. And that it's not automation, Dave, it's ownership. And I know that sounds a little bit funky, but it's a real big mindset change. What you're doing here is you're introducing cloud employees to own full roles, not just tasks. The second thing we're seeing really here is that managers now start to flip right here. This is super interesting. We talked about this before. The ECE ratio comes into play. So you're now seeing employees to cloud employees, line managers, lead agents like team members, and very interestingly, AI architects from the last phase, they step back to manage the system, not the agent. It's a real org structure. So those line managers.
I got to pause you because it's a subtle difference at first. Then when you get it, it's different. What we're talking about is a difference between an assistant and an autonomous cloud employee. This is an agent that once you build it, it runs independent to you. So give us an example of what that is. And we talked about one last week, but be even more broad than that.
Yeah. I mean, I think that it's job versus task. And again, that's a word I think you're going to hear a lot. But I
That's right.
just mentioned one because, one that we just released out into the market was this idea of a lead response agent. And again, what people have been doing the last little bit is, oh, look, I created this agent to scrape a website to get information. I ran a waterfall in this tool to be able to append information. And I'm so excited. And I don't want to knock that. Those are amazing tasks as part of your inbound funnel. But what I wanted to do, Dave, and what we wanted to do was have a cloud employee just run the whole inbound funnel, a lead response agent that takes all of those tasks and delivers an outcome.
So this is amazing. So let me share some of the results from how that ran. So you ran it last week, of course. And look, we've been in this BD space, this appointment setting space or lead response space for years, 20 years. So it kind of blew my mind. Now, what happened is as soon as somebody filled out a form on the getsignals.com website, the cloud employee, you've named it Zoe, basically built a real-time strategy. So it sent an email, made a phone call. If somebody engaged and responded before that, it would actually change its strategy, and then it would wait 24 hours, do it in the morning, wait another 24 hours, do something similar in the afternoon, wait 24 hours, do something similar the day later, like in the evening. So it's using some of those MIT study, that lead response study strategies, but it would basically use email, text, phone calls, in different sequences, trying, mornings, evenings, trying different cadence strategies. And what blew my mind was
33%. Dave.
Was that a third actually just showed. No, don't steal my thunder.
No, so, I want to steal your.
No.
You're not. This
30%. And by the way, this is not the best BDR in the world, but it was a good BDR.
Yeah, that's fair.
Basically, magically, a form gets filled out, your calendar gets filled up. Like it happened. So like my best metrics I've ever seen are 70 to 80% of MQLs get appointments set.
Yeah.
In this case, it was a third, 33%. I would bet listeners, most of their BDs operate right around that ballpark. I mean, maybe 30%, 40%. And that, you're looking at maybe some lower quality, like more tire kicker type leads.
That's right. That's fair.
It's amazing. A third. So that's the entire BD job just was performed by Zoe.
Look, and I think that you did a pretty good job of explaining that. So that is pretty good. But I think the idea here is, I was telling you this morning, I think we just witnessed something very seriously monumental in GTM history. Maybe I'm a little over the top, but for us dogs who've been there for a while, it's crazy. As you said, the first time ever, 33% of our requests magically showed up on reps' calendars. No SDR, no follow-up, no scheduling back and forth. Now, people have already said to me, Gabe, we've done this before. We have automation. We sent Calendly links and people booked. Sure, but this is different. Why? And you hit it. This wasn't automation. This was a fully autonomous cloud employee on email, text, phone, booking meetings. We didn't write the email. I did not script the responses. I didn't tweak it every second, the sequences. We didn't set up some drip campaign. We treated her like a rep, Dave. We taught her the principles and let her run, and she delivered. Book meetings, close.
Let me highlight something too. So one of our customers saw the announcement and then filled out a form and said, I want to see how this works. Well, guess what? We don't want a customer to get the exact same experience that a prospect gets. And so it actually completely altered its engagement strategy. So it's not just running a cadence. Like, this is a big deal. It did not run a cadence. It basically built and designed its own. Zoe, she built her own engagement strategy and it adapted. So think about it this way. If somebody fills out a web form, she emails them and they email back immediately and say, hey, this, I'm not interested. It doesn't keep it down that process. Or if she says, I'm interested, maybe reach out to me and give me more information. Zoe will make a phone call. So it's adaptive at each stage of this process.
I think that's it. Yeah, Dave, that's back to that architect phase. I mean, we could now go into the support function, right? And we could talk through a similar type concept. And so task to job. And again, a lot of people, I think this is a little bit newer, but these types of cloud employees, these autonomous entities, I think, are really changing the game as we move into this autonomous enterprise. So that would be it, Dave. That's kind of some of the things. Again, we've shared some of the research out, but as we've dove in, I thought it'd be interesting today to kind of walk through those 5 levels and talk about some of the tactical things that people are doing to move and operate successfully in each of those levels, because I think it's pretty cutting edge.
That is. That's amazing. Well, keep talking to people, keep sharing, keep learning, and then and come share with everybody.
Appreciate it, my man.
Thanks.